Welcome back to the series, What We Believe. Today we're going to talk about Old Testament and New Testament. Because a lot of people will sit and think of the Old Testament as 3,000-year-old history that's musty and dead and nobody needs to pay attention to anymore. But the New Testament is the good stuff. The New Testament's about Jesus. A lot of people will look at the Old Testament as all law. It's what God demands of His people. We don't really have to read or study that anymore because we have New Testament, we have the Gospel. Both of those views are really wrong because both Testaments tell a story. And it's a story of how God has created His people. How God created His people to have a great and perfect relationship with Him and love Him perfectly. But how we humans have failed in that. We brought sin into the world and it's failed. And it's a story of how God is restoring that relationship. And beginning in the early chapters of the Bible, it's how God made a promise that He was going to restore that. And that's Jesus Christ. We see those promises lived out in Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, God's people. How God makes those promises and living out that story and how that story is evolving into Jesus Christ. It's a story in the prophets how the people fail, but God continues on His faithfulness and continues His promises to them. And it comes to climax in this Jesus Christ coming. We read those in the Gospels, where God begins to fulfill His promises and send His Son Jesus Christ, and we see that saving and that grace coming into the world in Jesus Christ. But the rest of the New Testament continues that story on. As it lives out and that gospel spreads out is how that promise continues to explode and evolve out into the world. And it's really how we live that out as well. Because we're people of the Bible. Yes, we look for our salvation and God's instructions. But the Bible is also our story. It's a story of how we live out that gospel and how we live as followers of Jesus Christ, how we live as disciples out into the world. And we continue to live that promise and story of God restoring His people to that relationship in Jesus Christ.